We do have Eric sitting in the background. Our guest today, Adelaide Adrenaline commentator, voice of Australian hockey, I like to say. And I don't know if Eric would like that tag, but I believe so. We'll bring Eric into the show now. Eric Balnar, welcome to Morning Hockey Shot.
What is going on? Hopefully you can hear me okay. What's happening?
No, you sound good, mate. No, perfect. No, just talking about the North Stars. I'd sort of like to highlight a few teams each week and release an article and just some thoughts that I have. And I don't know what you've seen of the North Stars this season, but from the start of the season, obviously the World Championships and the imports hadn't arrived. But I feel like the North Stars are really building into their season now.
Yeah, well, when they were in Adelaide, when I saw them, they, it was Evgeny Skachkov. It was his second game. They had just played that Sunday game before. They were missing Wahib. They were missing a couple of the key locals. So I think building into it is probably a good call. I don't know. It's like, I feel like they kind of feel like Canberra last year in a way, right? Like, I mean, maybe not as dramatic as losing all those games at the start of the season, but in the terms of, yeah, you know what? As long as we stay afloat and mathematically alive, as long as we can make a run late and build into it, they'll be okay. But yeah, I mean, they've got some obviously key locals, and then the superstars they brought over are obviously have pretty big pedigree. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they it'll come down to the goaltending, right? Can they get the goaltending to get it done? Like I think the team last time I checked had like a 840 save percentage or something like that. So it's all well and good to have all that, but if their goaltending isn't there, it's not there. So hopefully they'll be okay.
Yeah, that seems like the trend across hockey worldwide, isn't it? It's I remember I listened to a lot of Jeff Merrick, and I remember Jeff Merrick saying something along the lines of if you win, it's 20% or 30% of your goaltending or something. If you lose, it's 80% or something like that, something along those lines.
Yeah, it gets skewed in an interesting way. But I mean, like, you know, they have a goaltender. Like, you need a goalie that can get hot basically for one weekend, right? And you kind of trust that a guy like Charlie Smart can get hot. But I think for them, I mean, like maybe the key might be to not play 3 games, right? Like that might be the whole key to success is will they be able to do that 3 days in a row with no days rest and put a big task on goaltending that has been a little bit inconsistent at times. So I think that'll be the key for them is can they just shorten that weekend down to 2 games? But again, didn't need it last year either, right? So what do we know?
Yeah, and the Mustangs, I suppose, when they had Liam Hughes a couple of years ago, they had a hot Liam Hughes between the pipes and went all the way and won the cup. I have got you on because of the Adelaide Adrenaline. Obviously had to wait at the start of the season to play their first game. It felt like we were waiting for so long for them to actually get out on the ice. What is the vibe with the Adrenaline at the moment this season? And I felt like sort of a lot like the North Stars that they've slowly built into their season.
Yeah, I think the vibe has been obviously getting better as the season's gone on. And I think when you win back-to-back weekends and win 4 to 6 games, it kind of does that. I think it was always going to be a pretty tricky start for Adelaide, right? Like, obviously, this team hasn't made the finals in a very long time. And they sort of started the year without those 2 marquee imports, right? Like, I think you can just watch the game and you can see the kind of influence that Koi Priveau and Roman Nekludov sort of make on this team, and you'll see it this weekend when they're playing the Mustangs, right? Like I'm keen to see actually how they go on a bigger ice surface, like in Melbourne, now that they've been here a few weeks. But they didn't have those key imports. They had a new coach, Jade, who is like, he knows a lot about the game. He's a pretty experienced guy, but he hasn't coached in Australia before. They didn't have a preseason. Like they've had preseason, like, you know, they worked out, they trained, but they didn't have any exhibition games. They didn't play any other teams. And again, it was disjointed. Everybody's starting and they're not starting as well. So it's really hard to build into a season when you don't get a preseason to work on basic systems. You don't have your import goaltender here at the start of the year. You don't have your 2 key players. So What happens when you don't have all those things organized? You're probably going to lose some games. And I think one of the big differences is not just having those two key players come here, but have the team get more familiar with each other and play some games together. Have Jade Galbraith get more familiar with the players and the systems and the things that he wants to implement. And now you can see that effect. So, yeah, I don't know. I think if you could rewrite the Adrenaline season, you kind of would wish you would say, yeah, I wish they had 4 preseason games before the games kind of counted, just so Jade could see how the guys work together and how they play together too. So yeah, a bit of a disjointed start, but I mean, yeah, that's how it is for everybody. So, but that's kind of how I read the room, at least.
Yeah, and the Australian Ice Hockey League is so compact this season. You sort of don't really get a lot of time to be together. The season is sort of run and done pretty quickly. It's not like a stretched out NHL season or something like that where you've got plenty of time to get the roster together and make some moves. They're starting to find goals now, which I think is the really, really big thing at this stage of the season. And you obviously mentioned Nick Ludovs as well, who scored an absolute beauty of a goal on home ice the last time the Adrenaline played. How big has that been for the Adrenaline? Obviously, they're getting the wins now, but just able to find avenues to goal finally.
I think it's also the balance that they've kind of found, right? In past years, they've kind of had one line that's been scoring all the goals. Like I think, Tristan Metcalf would note that regularly last year in stats that he would send through, that like that Caden Elder line and Josh Adkins scored, like over half of the goals, and Adelaide was more dependent on 2 guys than anybody else. So to answer the first part, Nekudov makes a massive difference, right? Like what he changes is the power play, I think in particular too, right? Like, all of a sudden, Adelaide has now gone 4 straight games with scoring a power play goal. Entering last weekend, they had allowed as many shorthanded goals as they'd scored power play goals, and we had played like 12 games in the season. Like that is diabolical. Like that's what kind of you bang your head on the wall as a coach for. So now that Adelaide was scoring 2.5 goals per game, 5-on-5, that was about league average. Like that was kind of fine. But now you have a guy that has more puck position when it's 5-on-5 in the offensive zone. That's not going to allow as many goals the other way. Now you also have a guy that can help run things on the power play. Coy Privot makes a big difference. That's going to be a bit of a net difference. But on top of that, I think Adelaide's inserted a bit of identity below that top line. Like it's easy to talk about the guy that has 3 points, but that Joey McDougall line has been with Daniel Chen has been kind of used to shut down the other team's top line. And it's hard to do in the AIHL. Like the imports are always going to score, contain them the best you can. They've done a pretty good job of that over the last 3 weeks. And now they're starting to score. Like Joey scored that big goal in the game that they were trying to close out a big weekend to start the weekend versus Central Coast. Daniel Chan is buzzing around. The goals are going to start coming for him. But it's that line with the McGinnis brothers that I think has been a huge difference as well. So Remy and Marcel have made a massive difference when they were out with injury and sickness for about a 5-6 week stretch. The team loses a lot there. Like it's a third line that really contributes like a second line. They contribute a couple goals a game. And then all of a sudden that bottom line, when they're throwing out there, and they use bottom in a loose term, but Ryan Fohl had 2 straight games with game-winning goals or 2 straight wins with game-winning goals. And all of a sudden, Dom Trinka is like almost a point-a-game player over the last 3 weeks. So I think now they've found, like Jade has kind of found his groove with the 4 lines they're rolling out. They know what the top line does. They know what that McDougall line does. They know the spark the McGinnis line can bring. And then that kid line that has Trinka and Fohl kind of paired together, making a difference too. So I think from my perspective, that makes a massive, massive difference is having that identity, which kind of filters down from the top. Like you don't have to worry about the top line. It's set. Like you have Nekudov, Adkins, and Benson. Like cool, move on from there. So it's been pretty cool to see that part.
I'm here with Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator. I haven't got a comment on the Instagram from Claire Collins. I feel like Adelaide will move through quietly, excuse me, and jump up the table. I agree, Claire. You're just talking about identity, and someone that we've mentioned on the first episode of this show with Jeff Coop, and I love the way he plays. And a bit of a spoiler, I'm going to be releasing a feature article on Darcy Flanagan. How much does Darcy Flanagan bring to the Adrenaline? Because when you talk about identity and things like that, I love the way Darcy plays. And I know Darcy rubs people the wrong way and people might think he oversteps the mark, etc., etc. When you look at that identity side of the Adrenaline, what he brings to the team, how big has Darcy been in this season?
Well, I think he brings an edge, which is maybe something that the team has kind of lost in the past. And it's kind of hard, right? Like you play in this rink that is the smallest, probably maybe the smallest it would be the smallest in the league now. And it's a tight environment. There's not a lot of space out there. And now you've got a guy that can run into you, that can chirp at you a little bit, that can play with a bit of an edge, but he's also like a very experienced hockey player, right? Like Darcy wasn't in the league for a little bit, and sometimes it feels like the narrative is like Darcy wasn't in the league just because he wasn't in the league. But this dude is living in Europe. He's playing professional hockey. He's playing in different systems. He's playing on big ice. His game, I think, really suits small ice, but you can see how he brings that edge, even just timing times when he jumps in, joins the rush, goes into the corner, cuts to the middle of the ice, gets pucks directly on net, which is nice to see too. Like he plays with a bit of an aggression and a bit of a bit of gumption, I suppose, for a clean word to use, that makes it difficult to play against. So I kind of like watching. Yeah, it's fun to watch Darcy play. Obviously, the penalties come, and that kind of comes with the style of game. But I think you just sort of have to accept that, like, that's just what happens when you play on a line like Darcy does. That's going to happen sometimes, right? So yeah, you hope it doesn't come in a big moment, but you know that he creates things by living on a bit of an edge. But I think, yeah, the edge is something that's lacked there before. So it's a bit of, I don't know, to use like a Brad Tree Living word, like a bit of snarl to the, bit of snarl. What was the word that he used? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll totally agree. Brett Parker's in the comments as well. Just watching the box scores during the weekend, it's been great to see the Adelaide games being close or even unexpected wins from previous year standards. I feel it's exciting for the league overall. Plus, always have a soft spot for Adelaide. It's a great road trip and people are great. I think it's one of the things, and I've been to the Adelaide rink to watch the Mustangs in the Adrenaline a long time ago now, but it is always one of those things, Eric, where people know how passionate Adelaide Adrenaline fans are, and they just want to see the Adrenaline in the finals because it's been so long. I suppose they've got the new behind the goals. Have sort of tried to extend the capacity as well, where people are behind the goals on that right-hand side of the screen, things like that. How massive would it be for the Adrenaline fans if Adelaide can get into that top six?
Yeah, I mean, it would be huge, right? I think they travel well too, right? Like I'm going to reference back to that the PHL year when they had the finals, Adelaide Avalanche versus the Ducks in a best of 3 finals there. Like there was a huge portion of the crowd that were from Adelaide that were either supporters, fans, family, and they were loud throughout the game. They brought drums, they were celebrating, they took over the pub post game. There was a couple hundred people there, right? Like it was like a mass migration in terms of hockey standards that went down there. So I think you'd probably see a similar sort of thing if they were to qualify in Melbourne. Like I'm sure people already have like that as a soft flag, being like, if we're in it, we probably need to be there, and we probably need to be there on the Friday for 3 weekends. So I think you'd see a lot of people travel. And I mean, it's kind of cool. Like you go to the rink, and, I've been here now 10 years or 10 and a half years, I guess, but since 2014. But, many of the same faces that were there 11 years ago when they still were on a playoff drought, and they still are now, are there today. And a lot of players that, a lot of people that sponsored a player that long ago are still sponsoring a player today. So I think it would be deeply rewarding to see the guys that they've stuck with. Like through thick and thin is like not a word that's used loosely, right? Like it's all thick. It's thick. Yep. Like you support the Adrenaline through thick. And it's the hard times that you kind of love the boys and love everybody through, but it's the hard times on the ice. Like I think that's an important separation as well, right? Like, there's a good vibe around the community. The people still go there, and yeah, they can get frustrated with not lots of wins. Of course, the boys are going to get frustrated too, but it's pretty united community. So they will be absolutely pumped if it happens. But I think the path is, like, the question is did they leave it too late, right? Like, who do you think their battle is with to make the finals? Like, they're in 7th right now. They're 2 points back of the defending champs. So it's easy to say, yeah, they, 1 win and 1 Canberra loss this weekend, and Adelaide's in. But who do you think their battle's actually with to get into the top 6?
Well, I think it's the Brave. And I know that I just pumped up the North Stars, but they've got a massive game today when they face the Melbourne Ice. So all of a sudden, if the Adrenaline can get the result in the win today against the Mustangs, and the Ice continue on their merry way and they get the job done against the North Stars, all of a sudden that brings the Adrenaline a little bit closer to the North Stars as well. So I think it's the Brave and the North Stars are the two teams that I think they're chasing down. And the Rhinos, like the Brave and the Rhinos play today, and the Rhinos aren't a pushover. And the Rhinos can score heavy. If the Rhinos get some confidence, and they've played probably 5 good periods out of the last 6 periods, they've played 5 good periods, and they're really finding form. They got the win against the Mustangs, so it's not an easy game for the Brave today too.
I agree, but can I suggest 2 alternate teams that I think that the Adrenaline's battle is with to make the finals?
Yep.
So I think, well, I mean, the Brave is obviously one. I mean, they got 16 points. Adelaide have 14, right? Like mathematically, that's a battle. But something in me just tells me, like, you see what happened with the Brave last year. You see them signing imports again now. They are just like a team that knows when to peak, when to get good. They've done it before. They've lost some key players from last year. I do understand that. But I just feel like the Brave are going to go on a run. But the key thing for me is that the Adelaide Adrenaline have already played 3 games versus the Canberra Brave, right? They only play them once. So I'm kind of looking at teams that you control your own destiny against. That's why I think that this weekend versus the Melbourne Mustangs is like absolutely crazy big, because Adelaide are 8 points back and they have a game in hand against the Melbourne Mustangs. If you can just split this weekend and win both at home, all of a sudden you now are 2 points back and you have a game in hand. So like in terms of teams that you can actually chase are the Mustangs, but don't rule out Adelaide actually catching the Brisbane Lightning in a bit of a battle as a path forward, because the Lightning have a pretty tough schedule coming forward. And between now and the end of July, Adelaide and Brisbane play each other 4 times. Like it's a best of 4 series. There's a 12-point gap there right now, but Brisbane also have to play Newcastle, who I agree with you are hot and they are surging. And that's a road trip to Newcastle as well. So they got to play back-to-back games in their barn, and they're playing Perth this weekend. So is there a reasonable world? Brisbane have surprised a few people, right? But could you see Brisbane going 1-3 in those games versus Perth, a very good team, and versus Newcastle, very good team? Yeah, then all of a sudden you're saying that's 3 points there, and then the other 4 are games versus the Adelaide Adrenaline. And without making any prediction, it's just simple math that says, all right, it's 4 games. We're 12 points back. Brisbane have to play some pretty good teams on the side. If we can win 3 of 4 of these games versus the Brisbane Lightning, all of a sudden we're right on their heels too. So I think the Lightning, even though they're at 26 points and they look for far ahead, they're a team that's sort of in play. It just depends how much of a big believer you are if the Canberra Brave are going to go through. Because if you truly believe that the Brave are the defending champs and they're going to surge their way through, then it feels like, yeah, they're only 2 points ahead, but maybe the battle isn't with them. So you kind of have to look at teams you can jump. That's why the Mustangs and the Lightning, I think, have to be kind of turned attention as like the most important games in the series that you play coming up.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I totally see that as well. And it's because it's something that I mentioned in the blue paint. I mentioned the Mustangs, and I have twice this season about there's something just off with the Mustangs. Like I haven't been able to put my finger on it. Now they're struggling in the goaltender department. I don't know what's happening with Kimlin, but they're putting in Tom Pappas on the road against teams like Newcastle, etc. And Brody Lindahl, I believe, is not in the country anymore. Might be on holidays or something. So they've lost some firepower there. So the Mustangs could be the team. And you did mention about getting the split. I think most teams in the competition on the road, they aim for that split. If they can get a road sweep, perfect. But if you can get a split, it really will put Adelaide in a good position. And we do have
Adelaide only play Brisbane and Melbourne over until the end of July. It's 8. Their next 8 games are Melbourne and Brisbane. So that's the season, right? Like you have to go on a run here. You have to win 6 of 8 games because you can hunt down teams in the standings if you win against the teams you're chasing. So I think what will reveal itself, if Adelaide are going to be in the finals, it's because they've played well over these next 8 games, and it's because they beat teams that they're chasing, which is just Melbourne and Brisbane.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a comment here from Michael Cloth. a fellow commentator, Melbourne Ice commentator. Adelaide didn't get any of the Bears Dogs loan players for the season. In regards to long-term development and team building, is this the right call? There was something I was going to bring up with you because it feels like, and when I look at the Adelaide Adrenaline not making finals, but I see almost like the production line of young talent that come out of Adelaide. You mentioned Dominic Trinker before. Obviously, Matus has now gone up to Brisbane, but an outstanding goaltender. You got the Chens, the Kudelkas, all this local talent that's coming out of Adelaide. Just a comment on Michael's comment there about, is it the right call and long-term building and development?
I think it's probably the right call for long-term, but short-term it hurts you because there's a lot of good players that left to other teams. But the deal is, if you were on the Ice Dogs and the Bears, you can go to another team for a year, but if you stay on that team, it costs you a lot more points when you're doing the player transfers than it would otherwise, right? So, if Brian Funes is going to stay in Newcastle, well, it's going to be expensive in terms of point-wise for Brian Funes to stay there. So, a lot of these players are going to go back to the Bears and the Ice Dogs because teams simply can't factor that into their mathematical equation when they're trying to build a team. And Adelaide didn't bring anybody. Now, I think it would have been cool to see one of the players from another team there. It would have provided a much needed boost. There's players there. There's players that are available. But Adelaide, every single player that's on this roster now could theoretically come back next year, and they're still not necessarily in that win now development mode. So maybe you didn't need to take a swing where other teams are like, oh my God, like we need a top defenseman to, like, this guy's available. Like, let's have him come here, play for the season. So I think short term, obviously other teams all load up with all these players, but long term, I think, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have all these guys play together. Like, those that McGuinness and Best line could be rolled back, I don't know, for years to come, or at least you just get more of an idea of who the Adelaide players are from a coach Jade Galbraith perspective, who you hope is back again next year. And you hope he can enter another season and say, all right, I've had a year. I know this player's style. I know this personality, and I've been around there. So I think long-term, it's probably a good thing, but you won't necessarily see dividends from that. But yeah, like, it would be, I think people were kind of hoping you'd have these star players come across and join the team. But that's the big thing that, maybe that everybody's not necessarily aware of, or all the fans are, that it's not just like, you can't just keep these players. Like, it will be mathematically impossible if you have a couple players from the Bears and Ice Dogs to keep those players on your team because of the way the points structure is going to be worked.
Yep, absolutely. We did sort of touch on it with the Adrenaline and the Mustangs. They've got a doubleheader weekend. From an on-ice perspective, what do the Adrenaline need to do to get either a split or a sweep against the Mustangs? And obviously, we know that the Mustangs have got Scott Timmins, who has been one of the greatest imports the league has seen. They've now signed Nathan Dunkley, who comes out of the London Knights system as well, has actually played alongside Evan Bouchard, etc., at the London Knights. So obviously got a lot of talent. Ty Wishart on the back end, etc. What do the Adrenaline need to do out on the ice in terms of structure to get the result this weekend?
Limit the odd man rushes. Like, I think you can live with Adelaide losing games. Let's say they lose 9-8, but all those 9 goals that the Melbourne Mustangs scored were because it was off of a forecheck or a cycle, or it was hard-nosed, or their power play was looking good. And you had that systematic, as in playing to a system, and I guess just that effort level. If that was all there and you felt like, well, they scored 9, but man, they earned those 9 goals, you can kind of live with that. I think Adelaide they've succumbed over the last few years to these 5-minute stretches where things just look like shambles, and there's odd man rush here, and there's a bad giveaway here, or a poor puck decision on a simple clearance going through the middle of the ice rather than on the outside, or having a lack of structure on the power play and an odd man rush shorthanded going the other way. So I think it's those little effort things that mean to try to limit those odd man rushes. It's a hockey game. Things are going to happen. I'm not saying that, it's a marker, but I think that's the thing you look for is like, is Adelaide giving up odd man rushes or those little breaks in waves, because those have been absolute backbreakers for the team. And I think they played so well in that, like that Canberra game at the AIS was just like, where did this come from? Like they had puck possession, they were tilting the ice in one direction at time. And then when Canberra were piling it on, it was felt more like everything was from the outside. Canberra had a lot of puck possession. They had a couple chances in tight, but they weren't like, oh my goodness, now the guy's breaking out on a big ice on the left side. So yeah, now they're going to a big ice surface that they haven't played a game in a week. Like how sharp are they in terms of playing a system that can limit those odd man rushes? So that's what I'm looking for today. Like, are they sloppy in terms of giving up opportunities? They're going to have to be tight there. And when they have the power play opportunity, they're going to have to work they're going to have to work harder than the team that's shorthanded to make sure that they're not giving up anything on that end too, because it has been a problem.
Yeah, and the Mustangs, they find a way, even shorthanded, they look for that outlet pass and look for that stretch pass through the neutral zone. So it's definitely something you've got to keep an eye on, 100%. I am with Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator. Drop a comment in the chat if you're here, if you want to ask Eric a question. Just one more before I let you go. I've probably kept you way longer, as I said to Chris last week, way longer than I thought. I've mentioned off the top, I've got a Melbourne Aces hat on here. And I know that you're heavily involved in baseball here in Australia. It's a sport I love, and it's a sport that, a long time ago for Hewitt Sports Network, I actually covered the ABL for a little bit as a journalist. I know that baseball the ABL side of things has had its struggles recently. There's been a lot of news. I just look at the ABL and I look at the AI. Do you see a big correlation between the two leagues and sports here and where they stand? And how do you think that the two leagues or the two sports could actually work closely together to try and expand their reach and their supporter base and all that sort of stuff?
I definitely see similarities in terms of standing and facility, in terms of where it exists in the Australian sporting system, right? Like there is a lot of parallels, and you're right. There probably is opportunity to work well together because it is opposite season, and maybe that's packaging online content or streaming content or whatever that looks like. I think the big difference between the two leagues is the quality. And I don't mean that in terms of like the entertainment value and going there. I mean the actual player that goes to this league, right? Like there were the number one overall pick in the Major League Baseball played in the Australian Baseball League, and he's Australian and developed from the Australian system, right? Like, are we ever going to have an Australian be the consensus number one pick in the NHL? There have been 75 players since the league came back in 2010 that have moved on to Major League Baseball since playing in the ABL in the last 15 years. We're not going to ever have those numbers in the AIHL, well, at least in the immediate future, of us being able to say, oh yeah, in 15 years from now, are we going to be saying there have been 75 players who played in the AIHL who then advanced to the NHL? Like, it's just not, like that's where the big difference of the quality is, right? Like the Tokyo Giants, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Oryx Buffaloes, like these huge brands around the world send players here. So that's the big difference in terms of the overseas investment, right? Like that is the big one. Like when you're the Tokyo Giants and you're sending 3 players to play in the ABL, you're not only paying the players to be there, but you're paying staff to go over, you're paying for a routine, and you're getting them quality game time in that system. All of a sudden it's $100,000 investment from, the Tokyo Giants to send players and develop in that league. So I think that's the big difference between the two, is while maybe the standing and the tier in the sport is the same, and we could probably do a better job of trying to scrap your way up there. Internationally, it's not viewed that at all. Like Australia is a top 10 country in the world when it comes to playing baseball and beats the likes of Korea at World Baseball Classic. So I think that's the big difference, with all due respect to everybody that plays in the AIHL. It's their 9 to 5. Like it's not their 9 to 5. Sorry. Like they have full-time jobs, families, and that's what makes this league special, man. Like that's so cool that everybody's like, and that's why I love it as well. But the players that are in the ABL has now got to a point where they are baseball players 9 to 5. That's what they do. So that's a big difference in terms of how the athletes go about it. Because imagine the quality of hockey we'd have if we said to the Adelaide Adrenaline, because that's why I'm on here. If we said, all right, you're getting paid to play the game, you're getting paid to do it in the off season. quit your jobs. You do not have to be a lawyer. You do not have to be a Sparky. You do not have to be a student. You will only focus on getting better in the offseason and playing hockey. And in the AIHL season, you will be practicing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, sometimes twice a week. And then you get to go and play games, and you don't have to worry about the rest and recovery with work. I think the quality would be a massive difference. It's not going to happen, though. So that's the big difference, is it's amateur versus professional.
Yeah, totally agree. We suppose we need a billionaire to come in and take over the Australian Ice Hockey League. And like we've seen with the PWHL, which is awesome and amazing, maybe we need that here.
Well, you want to make the teams a bit more economically viable in the ABL. That's the problem. It's amateur versus professional, right? Like, you're not paying a whole. Imagine if you went to every AIHL owner and said, all right, on top of the cost that you have already to operate the Melbourne Mustangs, you now need to pay, what was the salary cap in the ABL last year? $130,000 or whatever it was, right? Like 150,000, 200,000. I actually don't know the number, but I'm just throwing out random numbers. Call it 150 because it's just a nice random number. If you said, hey, Melbourne Mustangs, now you have to stick to $150,000 salary cap and you have to pay those players that, like, all of a sudden that's quite literally $150,000 more on the operating budget than what exists right now. So, I'm sure the AIHL owners would have a tough time stomaching that. So it's tough, right? Like, these are professional players playing in a league, in a landscape where baseball is just not considered a top tier sport, even though it is around the world.
Yeah. And when you're talking about the thing that the fact that the AI isn't like that is why you love it. I totally agree, because it's one thing that, and I know it's totally different, but I used to watch a lot of English Premier League soccer, but now I don't watch it at all. And it's that multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar industry and players getting paid exorbitant amounts, which is why I don't love it anymore. And it's why I love the leagues like the AI.
That I explained that to my to a lot of my friends as well. And like, one of my best buddies, he actually works pretty high up in the NHL media department, and he follows this league closely. And one of the big reasons is as well, and we talk about it all the time, is that the Australian Ice Hockey League has soul, right? Like, it's not about the money. It's not about any corporate partnership. It's about soul. It's about playing who you are because you love the game. You love showing up to the rink with your brothers and your mates and your community. And there's a lot of pride. Like, yeah, maybe these players aren't getting paid, but people are still paying to see them play. And you have to wear that as a badge of honor in terms of how you play, because people are investing their money and time to watch you do something. But the reason you're playing is because you genuinely love it and you have a reason. So when you win, like, those reactions anytime anyone lifts the Goodall Cup, look, I don't know, I've never been close to it, but I've watched enough of them. But they like, you can see how much it means to community, and you can see how much it means to the player, because there's no other factors for the most part. I mean, there's a couple, everybody knows there's a couple stories mixed here and there, but overwhelmingly it's because these players play with soul, which is what makes it a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they should enjoy it. It's one of the oldest ice hockey trophies in the world. So they should have that reaction. Corey Katina is in the chat from Minnesota. Evening, guys. Evening, Corey. And Brett Parker, who's at work at the moment. The dream, right? Maybe one day, talking about the billionaire taking over the AI and bringing it up the sporting ladder here in Australia. I've kept you a lot longer than I thought I would, Eric. One thing I want to finish on, the NHL draft is going at the moment. I don't know who your team is, actually. I'm a Flames fan, so I'm hoping they make a good selection. But what are you expecting out of the draft, which is on right now?
Well, what I am keeping an eye on is for a player. I just talked about a player from Australia will never be drafted high. There is a player who was born in Adelaide and spent the first few years of his life in Adelaide before moving to Sweden, who could be drafted in the first round. His name is Jacob Wozniak. He's been playing in Sweden, but he's I think he was the number 8 ranked prospect, number 9 ranked prospect from the international board. So that would put him in the first round. And he was born in Adelaide. I think he lived in Adelaide for like 2 or 3 years, but his dad is South Australian. And then moved to Adelaide. So, I mean, the South Australian blood is there. It's just a fact. He was born in Adelaide to South Australian pedigree. Unfortunately, it's not one that we can claim like Nathan Walker, who grows up in Blacktown, still comes back to Australia. Like, he's very much an Australian product, but still kind of cool that, he is from Adelaide. He mentioned in interviews that he grew up playing cricket, and he goes back in summers and plays on the tennis courts near his grandparents' house and all that stuff. So I'm watching that. I'm a diehard Leafs fan, so the first round of the draft is like irrelevant for me. Like, it may as well not even exist. Like, it's just a day that goes by. But I'm hoping to see a couple big deals. I would love to see a big trade somewhere in there from some team. That's what I always love watching, is those draft day deals. So yeah, we'll see. How about you? Who's your team?
I'm a Flames fan. So we're lacking in centers. So if we can find it, our first pick is pick 18, unless they move up in the draft order. We have got Rasmus Anderson, who's out on the table for a trade. So maybe that's something that happens. But as long as we can pick up centers and get some center depth, then I think there might be a couple of decent centers at pick 18 that I've seen in the pre-mock drafts.
Yeah. And yeah, the Flames are in an interesting danger of being in no man's land, right? So hopefully they can shake something up and move themselves out of that kind of middle one that might be pushing for a playoff spot, might just miss and kind of stuck in never bad enough to be bad, but never good enough to be good.
Brett's just jumped in, saw John Tavares re-signed. So that's must be breaking news, I guess, this morning. I did see Sam Bennett re-signed for 8 years at Florida, and looks like Tavares is re-signed at the Leafs.
4-year extension, I heard, with where is it? Yeah, there he goes. How's this for a salary cap hit? What do you think that salary, without you knowing, this is clear, what do you think his salary cap hit was?
I was expecting something probably 6.5, 7.
So if the Leafs got him for 4 years with an annual salary cap hit of $4.39 million.
Wow.
That plays.
That's a hometown discount.
That's a hometown discount. And that's a hometown discount that happened 7 years too late. But no, that's a good one, right? Like, that age is good. You were worried that was going to become a Stamkos situation. But 4.39 is very palatable, right? Like, even if he's the last 2 years of the contract aren't quite there, you can probably live with that. And you can probably trade him on a salary retention deal as well for an asset, for a guy that, players you saw that with Brad Marchand, right? Like, I think players are going to be, or elite players are going to be better longer, because we are now at a generation that 20 years ago is really when all this sports technology and how you attack a game with your body really took into effect. So right now we are experiencing the first generation of players that really can play at an elite level for longer. And I think you're going to see more and more top-end players be able to do things like Brad Marchand did just in the playoffs, because they've only known how to do this, and they've been treating their body differently, not better, because the science just wasn't there before, but they've been treating their body better, which will allow elite players to play longer. So that's interesting. 4.39 is an outrageous deal. Holy cow.
Absolutely. Totally agree. What's the rest of the day look for you today, Eric?
Well, I'm actually going away to a cabin on a bit of a weekend winter getaway with my partner, but it's all built around the key things. I actually have a rare weekend off. I was just covering a bunch of baseball tournaments for stories that nobody needs to hear, but I have a lot of time off coming up in the next little bit. So the plan is today is going to watch that Adrenaline Mustangs game, and then I'll head on up to a cabin, and tomorrow I'll do absolutely nothing, but I'll pop on the Adrenaline and Mustangs game, and hopefully can see Adelaide make a bit of a dent and just set up a good game next weekend versus Brisbane. Like, I would just selfishly, I would love to see Perth knock Brisbane off a couple of times, Adelaide get a minimum split in Perth, and then it just sets up a storyline for July that says, holy cow, Adelaide are in the thick of a race, because there is a scenario that Canberra win this weekend and Perth and Brisbane split and Adelaide lose both games. And you're kind of like, well, Adelaide are in some trouble again. So hopefully they didn't leave it too late.
And we love storylines. That's what makes sport amazing. All the storylines that come out of it. Eric Balnar, I've kept you on for a lot longer than I initially thought I would, but Thank you for jumping on the morning hockey shot. Enjoy your little trip away. Hopefully the Adrenaline can grab a couple of wins or split the weekend this weekend, and we can really see the Adrenaline push that top 6 for the rest of the season. But yeah, Eric, thanks for jumping on the morning hockey shot.
Man, it was great to be here. Anytime you need, I look forward to talking hockey more.
Thanks, mate. There he goes, Eric Balnar, the Adelaide Adrenaline commentator.